Hello, my fellow hunters. This is the RPG Relic Hunter, and I have a quick dealing with players video that I wanted to talk about as in my personal game and that I run, and also the game I play in. We had some experiences when uh, players were kind of getting messed with, or what happened to their characters and how it fit into each game. And I wanted to talk about ways to screw with your players dependent on the type of game you're doing. So there's three ways I wanted to talk about um, general kind of boxes that you would put any given event into. So I'm just going to talk about them, and I've got some notes. So the first way is like superficial things. So like superficial things would be like, okay, the character gets covered in slime after fighting a monster and is, all gross and smells bad, or falls in the bog and is covered in mud. And, it's a temporary thing until the character gets clean. Or, you guys go out for drinks at the tavern and one of the characters wakes up in the barn because they had gotten drunk. The party gets captured, but they break out and they're able to get their gear back and defeat the bad guys, or they get a curse. But the next adventure is actually going to the place where they can get rid of the curse, and then that's their next story tie-in. The thing these all have in common, and why I call them superficial, is that they're temporary. They don't affect the character's stats or ability other than the curse, but that's a build around one. Um, and the type of gaming that supports is like the power fantasy gaming. And some people don't like the power gaming fantasy, or like the power fantasy gaming. There we go. Not necessarily power gaming fantasy. But it's very popular. I mean, tons of anime are out there, and it is the power fantasy. It is the character has some ability, and you are the stand-in. Like Sword Art Online is a good example. So don't tell me it's not popular. Tons of people play D&D casually so they can be the barbarian that smashes or the wizard that shoots the fireball. And those players don't want to see this character that they've spent all this time on get nerfed or lose their special whatever. So these are good ways to mess with that kind of player and that kind of game. I'm going to move on to the next one so you can kind of see the difference. So the next one is messing with them in story ways. Like your family member ends up being the bad guy. This is a favorite one of mine. A loved one is mind controlled to fight against you, which actually I'm dealing with in the game I'm a player, where my character's brother actually ends up being one of the bad guy's major henchmen. Losing honor or rank can be a great moving forward point, and lots of story options there. Or like a new ward to care for. One of the other players in my game has this kid that he's trying to take care of who's an orphan. And these are great for players that are really into role play. They don't really care that something changes in the story that they have to take care of. They want that because that gives them more story options. So, if you have a game that's more story driven, like if, there's a game that has no combat, but lots of interactions between NPCs or the players, and that's a good game for you, you're probably a role player, story-wise, role-playing player. And those are some great ways to mess with those particular players. The last way I want to talk about is like permanent ways. These are the ones I think you just have to be careful with and make sure you have the right group for. Like, you destroy all their gear, or their best magic item that they've built their character around gets destroyed. You change gender or species or age or whatever, something permanent changes on their character sheet, or they get like a permanent wound or a scar and it changes their stats, or now they only have one hand, so things like that. And that really supports kind of a more hardcore play idea, like when you're really in it for the difficulty level. It's a certain game, and I'm kind of tap dancing around the term mature, because you know, you can have a mature player that doesn't want to deal with their character only having one arm because, you know, that's the permanent injury. So it's really kind of, you know, something you want to discuss. It makes me think of in Critical Role, where the player that played the warlock loses his patron. It's very interesting. There's a lot of story stuff, but not everybody wants that big of a shift. So you have to first identify, do you have a game group that's kind of casually into like having the power fantasy game where they're just out for the adventure and something minor is a good mess with your players type of thing? Or are you more, you have the story characters that they want a negative to happen that's going to cause lots of dramatic story? Or do you want more realistic, is probably a better way to term it, you know, than hardcore, like realism, where, you know, fighting can cause real permanent wounds. You know, you could have a one-handed barbarian after some big fight, or, you know, the rogue's hands get broken and then healed back so that he loses dexterity or something like that, which is cool story beats, but may not be for everyone. So that was it. That was some ideas, just to get you thinking about what type of game you have, what type of players you have, and fitting the challenges and bad stuff to those players. So I hope you have great games out there, and love role-playing, and have bad things happen that you love. And remember to play like the dice are trying to kill you, because they are.